So this has been a video long suggested by watchers. What if Smaug was in How to Train Your Dragon? Well, the universe would get a lot more interesting. If Smaug was the only one of his kind in How to Train Your Dragon, he would definitely feel superior to Toothless and the other dragons. Not only can he understand humans, but he can also speak their language. Even though Toothless would be seen as an alpha dragon, Smaug would probably solidify his placement in this universe as one of the alphas. Not traditionally, of course, but since no other dragon, as far as I know, can speak to humans the way that he does, the other dragons would look at him as some sort of god, or a much wiser and older dragon. Now here's where things get kind of messed up. He would be the perfect middleman to bridge the gap between humans and dragons and their hatred of one another. Except Smaug probably wouldn't do that. He would probably use it to incense their feuds even further. See, Smaug only sees humans as a pestilence, as an inferior species, so the very idea of Hiccup and Toothless' relationship would sicken him. We kind of covered this with our other video that we did called What If Daenerys from Game of Thrones met Smaug? Smaug wouldn't want to kill the other dragons, but he most certainly would want to be the alpha among them and want to wake them up from this trance, at least the ones like Toothless who are friends with humans. Now, of course, some of the dragons would be very loyal to their humans, and this is assuming that we're coming into a time where the dragons are still all on Berk or on islands where humans and dragons get along and they're not in the hidden world. Smaug would try to turn the dragons against their humans. If some of the dragons decided they did not want to turn against their humans, there would probably be some that would follow Smaug, seeing him as a much wiser dragon, and some that would stay. So there would be a civil dragon fight, for want of a better word. And a lot of the dragons would turn against the humans and probably Toothless and the others, and there would be some sort of dragon war. It's not realistic to think that all the dragons would just side with Toothless forever. Maybe they would see who would battle it out as alpha. And in that case, honestly, even though Smaug is a lot bigger, he probably would lose to Toothless. Toothless's power to spit plasma is just so much more forceful than Smaug's. Now, this is providing that Smaug can't catch him. All the dragons in How to Train Your Dragon seem impervious to fire, so all of Smaug's intentions of trying to kill Toothless would just fall to the wayside. His fire would do nothing. I know it's said that he's one of the dragons that has the hottest breath, but we have to figure that Toothless and all the other dragons live in a world where there are dragons that literally spit boiling water and acid. And while this may not mean anything, what I mean is they have a lot of different ways that they can spit things and different substances that they can spit as well. I mean, even the Death Song dragon, my favorite dragon of How to Train Your Dragon so far, it has the ability to act like a siren to lure dragons, who it sees as its prey, so that it can then entrap them in this weird liquid substance that hardens into a amber-like cocoon thing. It preys on other dragons, and it preys on humans as well, and possibly other animals. That's just one of the dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon universe that has powers that we couldn't even dream of. So, if Toothless was the alpha and he so wanted, even though he probably would try to fight Smaug on his own, he's very intelligent in his own way. Even though he can't speak human language, it doesn't mean that he's dumb. Toothless would find a way to get under Smaug's skin and also employ tactics he's probably picked up from humans as well to have an edge up on Smaug. He's a lot more agile as well than Smaug is, and can turn in the air quicker and do certain maneuvers that Smaug wouldn't be able to do. If Toothless wanted and he saw Smaug as something that was just so dangerous that he couldn't even let live, like the Red Death, if he's literally turning dragons on one another, then he may employ the rest of his followers to fight alongside him to take him down. And then at that moment, they would just aim for the alpha, which is Smaug, on the other side. Hiccup and Toothless would probably work together, and that's something that they would have on their side. Toothless would also have the humans as well, and Hiccup could make little tools and weapons to use against Smaug, but even if Toothless was by himself, he could still utilize the power of some of the other dragons as well. I don't believe Hiccup or Toothless would want to kill Smaug right away, but once they see how dangerous he is, they probably would want to take him down or at least exile him. If they can't exile him, then they would probably try to kill him to save the other dragons, because remember, these dragons are fighting and killing each other because of Smaug. He's causing a rift between the flight of dragons that Toothless has acquired under his protection. So the other dragons helping and Toothless being in the battle as well would definitely help to defeat Smaug. Now, let's go back to the scenario where Toothless and Smaug are fighting on their own. You're probably wondering, well, why would Toothless end up hurting him? Smaug is a dragon too. Well, from the Fury bio, I'm going to read an excerpt here. The firepower of the Night Fury and the Light Fury consists of an explosive semi-solid mass of acetylene oxygen flames. When it charging energy and shooting, high-pitched sound emits. When it hits a target, it explodes on impact. This allows it to kill almost all targets. The explosion is made up of a purple gaseous ring and a huge ball of fire at the center. The blast of plasma will explode even if it does not hit a target because at high altitude carbon dioxide is abundant and replaces the oxygen which creates the fire. The blast with no fire then explodes, as is seen in the movie when Hiccup was riding Toothless for the first successful test drive, or test flight. Now, I like what they did there because they put in the heat of the Night Fury's fire. It says, contrary to what the Vikings claim, the Night Fury's fire probably burns a lot hotter than the deadly Natter's. This is because acetylene and oxygen can burn at around 6,500 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt tungsten, which has the highest melting point of all the metals, while magnesium burns at around 5,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Toothless's fire blast flame is actually ionized enough to become a plasmoid, according to Hiccup. That of course would explain why it explodes on contact. Plasma works almost like a cross between a liquid and a gas. It also can emit many temperatures, not just extreme heat. And we know this because then when he kills Hiccup's dad, I mean, he should have exploded into pieces. When we first see Toothless, or not see him, he's like flying as a shadow over Burke, he shoots plasma blasts where he's actually trying to do damage and they explode things on impact. So, if he really wanted to do damage on impact, he could make it so. So not only would enemies of Toothless have to contend with the heat, the sheer heat from his plasma blast, but also from the impact that they create when hitting their target. Now to correctly calculate what Smaug's fire heat is, because they claim that he is one of the dragons with the hottest flame. How hot is Smaug's flame? Well, let's calculate dragons like Smaug, wyvern type dragons. Let's calculate how hot their flame really is on average in TV. Best and latest iteration of such a dragon would be Drogon from Game of Thrones. Drogon was a fearsome creature and one of the more powerful iterations of dragons for his age. In season 7, I believe it was episode 4, we saw Drogon's power, and his breath would almost turn people into ashes. I mean, he didn't instantly do it, because people were still running around and screaming while they were on fire. But his fire does keep burning to the point where they do turn to ash after a while. Some fire will just burn things up till they're charred and black, but Drogon's fire is so hot that in maybe seconds or minutes, those bodies are turned into ashes. A real-life situation where fire would be so hot to turn something into ashes would be cremation, which is what some people do if they want to keep their loved one's ashes. Bodies are cremated, but like Drogon's fire, the cremation doesn't happen immediately. It happens after a while of putting it in there. Bodies are said to be cremated between 1400 degrees and 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. If you want to talk about a hotter fire, you would have to have something that would instantly turn bodies to ash. The toughest part on a human body is their bone, of course. And the boiling point of that sort of calcium in the bone is about 2700 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, well, people may say that, well, Drogon and Smaug don't have that hot a flame because their flame is not blue. Which is interesting that you say that, because Toothless's flame kinda is. We can also say that Dragon's fire has magical properties, and Smaug's iteration of a dragon is a bit more magical than Drogon's. Or maybe they're the same. It just seems so freaking easy to kill the dragons in Game of Thrones, but that was partly due to the writing. Again, it was kind of easy to kill Smaug too, but you know what I mean. Let's just say none of the dragons really have magical properties. They just seem magical to us because they're just so mysterious. We also have to assume that Drogon, just like Toothless, has the ability to make his fire hotter in certain circumstances. Remember when he fried those goats? When Drogon wants to eat his meals, he doesn't disintegrate his meals because then that wouldn't be tasty. So dragons, in the sense of the word, have the ability to control the temperatures at which they spew their flame. At the hottest, we've seen Drogon spew his flame. He was able to instantly turn people into ash, and we're talking about the last battle, or massacre should we say, when Daenerys just lost it and killed everyone. Other people had an issue with Drogon's fire because they're saying that he was able to disintegrate castles and stuff in the last episodes. But they used the post from one of the Reddit users to try and figure this out, and the Reddit user said most castles use limestone or sandstone, depending on whatever type of rock was nearby to be quarried. The melting point of limestone ranges from 825 Celsius to 1339 degrees Celsius. The melting point of sandstone is about 1300 degrees Celsius, but varies based on density. So that means that Drogon's fire would have to at least be 2400 degrees Fahrenheit to cut straight through the stone, which lines up with the whole cremation bit that we said before. So let's be really generous and say that for Drogon to instantly turn people into ash to be the hottest that it is, his fire would have to be about 2700 degrees Fahrenheit. That means that Smaug, being one of the dragons with the hottest breath ever, the hottest flame, as they said in Lord of the Rings, I believe, he would have to be in that upper echelon category of dragons that can breathe fire to instantly turn people into ash. So his fire would have to at least be 2700 degrees Fahrenheit. Even if we're generous and we say he's one of the more powerful dragons with really, really hot flame, and we say it's like 4000 degrees Fahrenheit, it is still nowhere near Toothless's 6500 degree Fahrenheit flame. Also, consider that when Toothless spits his flame or his plasma blast, these are concentrated fire expulsions. That fire blast that's supposed to be carried out in a stream is going to be packed into one hell of a hot-ass ball. Let's also factor in the speed at which he spits them out, and thus the force at which they're going to hit their target. Along with the temperature, I mean, Toothless is really deadly, and I think he far outclasses Smaug in that department of firepower. Now, as for just raw physical power, Smaug would definitely obliterate him, but that's if he can catch him, which he most likely probably wouldn't be able to do. We've also discovered in Hidden World that Toothless and possibly all Furies have the ability to cloak themselves. So not only does Smaug have to contend with this dragon who is super fast, has extremely powerful and extremely hot firepower, but also has the ability to go momentarily invisible. Smaug would definitely be decimated if he goes up against Toothless, and if Toothless manages to keep himself away from him. Look at Drogon. How can he be so cute and ugly at the same time? It's so weird. As for Smaug bowing down to Toothless, Smaug is not that type of dragon. He wouldn't. If anything, if he found that these dragons were exiling him or trying to overpower him, he would just fly away and be somewhere by himself. He's not the kind to herd with these dragons and bow down to another male. He just would leave and be by himself. But one thing's for sure, if he couldn't play along well with the others, he would have to be separated from the others. Probably be classed alongside other dragons like the Red Death. Anyways, guys, what do you think about this? What do you think would happen if Smaug did enter into the universe of How to Train Your Dragon? One thing's also for sure, he would not be trainable. If Hiccup came up to him and held his hand out and like, come on, I'll scratch your nose, Smaug would burn him to death. First of all, he'd be amused and probably talk Hiccup's ear to death, and Hiccup would probably be kind of shocked that Smaug is talking, as most dragons probably would be. But then Smaug would be like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm done playing with you. Your insolence makes me very hungry. Hiccup would be dead. Unless, of course, Toothless is there to help him. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.